3. Need of caution and cooperating interactions amongst the two sexes. Joint presence of the powers of Agni, fire in the Yagya Kunda, and Soma, water line around the Havan Kunda, both is supposed to be essential in the religious performance of Yagya. The high thermal energy of fire needs to be controlled by the coolness of water. This is what is indicated by keeping the fire within the limits of a water line during a Yagya. Although the sacred fire, Yagya Agni, plays the major role in the process of Yagya, the procession of Kalash Yatra before performing a large-scale Yagya shows that Soma has precedence over Agni. Apart from the scientific importance of Yagya, the perfect matching of Soma and Agni also has significant socio-psychological implications in human life in terms of the implications of these words as the two streams of Kam. It teaches that the masculine vigor, physical strength and ego always need to be controlled by the soothing effects of feminine affection and compassion. Motherhood is the greatest gift of God endowed upon nature and the human society. Realizing this, the preeminent role of women in society should have been regarded as the law of nature in all spheres of life. Although the ancient society followed this law in action, it is unfortunate that the modern era presents an entirely different, distressing scenario. A major cause of the disharmony, insecurity, selfishness, cruelty, violence and immorality pervading in the modern world is the disrespect to womanhood. The so-called religious fundamentalists, the powerful emperors, talented artists and learned writers and poets of the medieval and modern times are to be blamed largely for scorning or exploiting the womanhood on the one hand and stimulating the sensual desires of the masses beyond the natural limits on the other. As a result, the feminine modesty, sentiments and tolerance are hardly able to breathe in the open horizons of life. Had women, the essential half of the human society, been given their due place in the political, social, economical and other important spheres, the world would have been shaped by now in an ideal form, appropriate to the dignity of humanity. If women, with the help of their inherent qualities of motherly kindness and love, modesty and sincerity and abilities of efficient management of resources, had led the political, social, educational, economical and related activities in the modern era, then this world would certainly have been a better place to live. It would have been saved from the dangers of nuclear and star wars, civil wars and terrorism, population explosion, environmental pollution, killer diseases like AIDS and the disastrous drug addictions etc. Although the status of women has been uplifted in the recent past, with the advent of educational and scientific developments in several parts of the world, much still remains to be done in this direction. Latent propagation of eroticism in the name of modernity, art, entertainment and humor continues to degrade femininity in general. Suppression of women by their own relatives in the name of religious or social discipline still shows its presence in many parts of the society. The economical, social and political disparities between the two sexes still persists. On the social fronts, justice, tenability and reason demand that a wife should neither be considered as a bondmaid nor a child-producing machine. Regarding her as a puppet, showpiece or a commodity for the sensual pleasure of her husband is equally harmful for the physical and mental health of the husband too. Further, a rise in the new disease like AIDS should be taken as warning signals of nature that it is time for humanity to stop profligacy, debauchery and illicit sex. Otherwise the tragic extinction may not be far off. As discussed earlier, the erotic trends of literature, art and cinema are the main culprits in depraving the mass mentality. Further decline would lead to disastrous fall in the hell forever. Nature will sure turn the clocks against this possibility of total destruction. This would be calamitous for those who do not atone and improve. It is the call of time that the worshippers of the Divine Mother Saraswati, the eternal source of mental, creative talents and artistic faculties, realize her sublime presence in all women and reorient their attitudes accordingly. The fundamentalists too should open their eyes and realize that the dawn of intellectual and revolution and scientific thinking is increasingly shining with the radiance of prudence on the social and religious horizons too. Before it is too late, they should wake up now and change their cynical, illogical and fundamentalist attitude towards women. Else, they would be the losers. The rise of the sun never waits for a sleeping duck. This message should go to those saints and sadhus as well, who regard woman race as the sinful obscurity in brahmacharya and spiritual elevation. Their baseless, prejudiced preaching has no match with the true teachings of religion and principles of spirituality. They should better look at the lives of the rishis of yore, the founders of the science of yoga sadhanas and spirituality, should also peep in their heart and see how honest are they in worshipping a goddess, representing thy force in feminine form. It is ironical that the religious texts they read day and night is full of feminine words in Sanskrit, such as pragya, sadhana, bhakti, mukti, siddhi, antaratma. They won't be able to repeat the blunder of abusing and discarding women, the moment they would get even a glimpse of their souls in the inner light. The masses should also note that women have already been granted equal status in citizenship almost the world over. The spring of freedom is not going to remain only at the political or constitutional levels, it is soon going to flow in full force in all directions of human life. The era of slavery has gone, revolutions against racial discrimination and apartheid have also wiped out their existence from human society. The divisions and disparities based on gender, caste or creed etc. are also going to be buried in the history with the current tides of global changes. It is not too far when man and woman would gain equal importance like the two arms of a body, or two wheels of a moving cart. The mutual cooperation between the two sexes should be on the basis of equality and mutual respect and trust. Even animals do not disobey the laws of nature, then why should such possibilities be always suspected in the company of two human beings, species endowed with highest possible mental faculties, of opposite genders? Why shouldn't a friendly and ennobling relationship like that between a brother and a sister exist between man and woman in all walks of life? It should be remembered that both the sexes are integral part of the human society, so both will have to live with the dignity of a human being. It is indeed the responsibility of all awakened men and women to work towards this end. Emancipation of women is also necessary today, because the future of humanity lies in their hands. The 21st century is going to witness this as a bright reality. While talking of equality, or woman liberation, care should be taken not to commit the mistakes of the Western society, where liberty led to a notion of free sex and broken marriages. Men and women live in a family bonded by so many relations other than that of a husband and wife. We all know and experience that there is no risk of deviation in the piety of their interactions. Such a relation could also be realized among all the members of a society, and of the world family too. In order to counter the vulgar trends of art and culture, we will have to create a parallel platform, of sane expression, of morally refined expression of people's literary and artistic talents. Good entertainment is bound to attract the people in successively larger numbers. For example, street plays and folk dances displaying the message of respect for all members of human society could be very effective for the masses like ours. The disciplines of spiritual science of calm would be of special relevance in this regard. Its intrinsic teachings on the enormous benefits of proper use of this sublime energy and on the dreaded harms of its uncontrolled waste or perversion, are also illustrated by nature in varieties of examples living around us. Happy couples, examples in nature. A large number of members of the animal kingdom demonstrate such a remarkable degree of discipline and responsibility in matters associated with reproduction and its consequent events that one finds them better, in several respects, than the social animal of today. Noted marine scientist Dr. Lord had studied the life cycle of a stickleback during his long stay in Ireland. According to Dr. Lord, the human society may learn a lot from this sea fish about how and when to prepare for the arrival of an offspring. Only the completely self-dependent and healthy males of this subspecies of fish plan for mating. Such a male searches for a female mate only after he prepares a home with the help of sea vegetation and a gel-type liquid secreted from his body at a safe place deep inside the sea for his would-be family. His patience, hard work and the sense of responsibility is worth noting by those men who desire to or expect to get married without even realizing the essential duties, including those with respect to physical, financial and social fitness, associated with it. What about those who support, propagate child marriages? Shouldn't they be ashamed to find that even a fish is more sensible and wiser than them? Mr. Frank Buckland's work on the stickleback fish also signifies its talent in house construction and management. The male fish works hard to prepare for its own marriage. It collects small plants and soft grass and wood pieces floating in water. It sticks them on the back by secreting an adhesive fluid from its body. In order to make sure that all the material for house is stuck properly, it dances vibrantly, as though it is used to enjoying the hard work. It brings the stuff at the pre-selected safe place and starts building the house for its would-be family. This male fish not only builds an artistically knitted nest from the stocked material, but also engineers holes in it for proper ventilation. It controls the flow of oxygen by timely fluttering its body according to the flow of water. It also plasters and polishes its house using sand particles and its body's adhesive secretion. Only after this due preparation, it searches for a compatible mate and brings her in the new home. It realizes that female is so important in a male's life. It therefore offers due love and attention to its mate, in contrast to the hypocrite men. It takes proper care of the female mate in her pregnancy, looks after the newborn offspring and even makes swings for them at the roof of its small house. It keeps arranging for the entertainment of the progeny and their mother, and unlike short-tempered, self-centered men, it maintains a joyous atmosphere in his house without ever complaining of its own fatigue or stress. Unless the kids are grown and testify self-dependence, it guards and trains them with care. The familial life of humans would also have been happy and progressing like that of sticklebacks, had not only the wife but the husband too were careful and prompt in transacting his duties towards the life partner. Seeing a dancing tortoise sounds funny, as we have not even seen it running. But it indeed performs excellent dance in water to entertain and please its would-be mate. Its joy of commencing a married life is expressed in its vibrant dance matching the flow of the high tide waves. A crocodile too dances blissfully with the thrill of finding its amour. It is his way of expressing affection and respect of its fiancée. A lioness delivers a baby after 108 days of pregnancy. After that, she restrains having sex for about 2 years. Till her cubs are grown strong and capable of hunting on their own, she remains busy in nurturing and training them affectionately. Even if she desires to have sex, she controls herself and avoids taking any risk of bearing a child till the growing ones are there to be looked after. Her sincerity and sense of responsibility teaches us the elevation of emotions. Emotional sensitivity doesn't always mean surrendering. Rather, it could be used to nourish the strength to fulfill the familial responsibilities with prudent care and honesty. Similar examples of patience, sincerity, fidelity and industrious sharing of responsibilities are found in the families of kiwi, cassowary, penguins, emus, moa, etc. Charles Darwin has described their married and familial life as balanced and dedicated. The male and the female birds in these species show maturity, love and understanding in their behavior with each other and with their offspring. The male bird usually bears greater responsibilities in raising the family. In spite of being smaller in physique as compared to its female mate, it arranges for a comfortable nest and offers her food when she is carrying the eggs. It also hatches the eggs and fosters the newborn offsprings. Both the parents jointly teach them flying and defense against the predators. Perhaps no man has to take so much trouble in having his own family as poor penguin does. It travels up to the South Pole twice a year in February and September. It learns from the experience of the elders and follows the guidelines of the authentic head of his society. Upon reaching the poles, the elderly couples occupy their residences, which they had left after the last trip. The youth male penguin takes the permission of his parents and ventures developing his own family. He firstly needs a compatible wife for this purpose. He first finds a young female who is still single. He then proposes to her in peculiar voice and by specific gestures. Unlike men who care more for physical beauty and wealth of the girls rather than their virtuous conduct and talents, the penguins see whether their would-be partner can provide them firm support and compatible company in all circumstances. In order to propose his willingness to marry a suitable female, he first collects clean, smooth round stones. He holds the best of these in his cell. He presents this gift to her, as an expression of his amity. The female infers his assiduity, courage, nature and other qualities by inspecting the stones. She nods her acceptance if she finds the male suitable, else she expels him away by attacking from her cell. If rejected, the male tries again. He waits at a distance from her in a gloomy mood in a hope of her mercy. In case he receives a cold or hostile response again, he starts searching for other possible mates. The nod of acceptance from his would-be wife sparks off an ecstatic wave in this bachelor. He begins to dance in a thrill. The female, being aware of the value of time and hard work in making a family, then commences making their house. On her signal, the male starts bringing stones for building their house. He also bears her scolding if he is not doing a good job. But he knows that her affectionate anger is for their own good and tries to improve himself rather than firing her back. After making a comfortable palace, they both go for bathing in the sea. They enjoy the dips in the clear, ice-cold water in each other's company and remain there for long hours. Upon return, sometimes they find their newly constructed house been occupied by some other penguin. They fight the encroachers and the winners get the house. Even if they get their house back, they again go for bathing to get rid of the fatigue and wrath of the quarrel. But now they don't commit the same mistake. They go for bathing in turn, so that one of them is all the time there to take care of the house. Their married life moves ahead with understanding, intimacy and endurance thereafter. The female lays the eggs but the male, the father, fosters the baby penguins. Both share the duties without any friction. Looking at them, one feels like setting their example before the men and women, who spent most of their life in selfish motifs and struggles to satisfy their endless cravings, but continue burning in the fire of jealousy and dissatisfaction. They should at least learn to have forbearance like the penguins. Penguins are also good in disciplining and training their children with due care and understanding. Their babies are allowed to move freely only after they become strong and experienced enough to know and tackle the world around. Men of our times have learned only to produce children. They largely remain careless about their responsibility towards them. Not even half of the fathers of today would stand better than the penguins in strict observance of their duties in this respect. Most of them don't even want to know that apart from sending the kids to schools, they also have a role in developing their children as ideal citizens. Why can't all the men who also are husbands, offer harmonious cooperation to their wives, especially in the societies where the latter are expected to strictly follow the doctrines of virtuous, dutiful life with due fidelity towards their husbands. Many a times men disobey all norms and cross all limits in lewdness. Why they can't learn from these birds and animals to set sane norms and observe them for their own and the family's welfare? Why can't they be little wiser in raising the children and helping adapt development of the younger generation? On the social fronts, even the tiny creatures like the ants are ahead of us and of many other higher organisms. As per their natural law, only their highest authority, the queen ant, lays the eggs and keeps the population growing. In accordance with the norms set for her, the queen honeybee selects only one male as her husband. The rest of the ants transact the essential duties, as laborers, sweepers, guards, messengers, etc. Throughout their life they fulfill the assigned task most sincerely and efficiently, giving no chance for complaint, although they don't get even a particle more than their tiny share under the uniform distribution system for the public ants. The world would have been so much better had humans learned the ideals of diligence, honesty and duty-bound lifestyle from the ants. But what to say about the folly of this intelligent being, who adopts all means of corruption and dishonesty, and even cheats his own near and dear ones for his selfish aims, and wants heavenly comforts without doing any hard work? Once a team of wildlife researchers spotted a group of wild elephants in an African forest. Luckily, they found a safe place from where they could clearly keep a watch on minute to minute movements of this group of the mighty animal. One day they saw that the whole group was busy in some hectic activity. All the youthful elephants had positioned themselves, making a circle of protection against likely enemies' attack. No one was allowed to move here and there without the permission of the oldest one, who, being the most experienced, was their leader. Unlike our society or families, where the more educated and talented young fellows regard themselves as the guides and don't feel shy in ignoring or even insulting the elders. A pregnant female elephant was lying inside the boundary. She was about to deliver a baby. On the guidance of the leader, 5 to 6 experienced females of the group entered the circle for her help. Soon the baby elephant was born. Some of the nurse elephants took care of the baby and others of the mother. They did all the job of cleaning and feeding both the newborn and his mother. Everyone else also remained on duty till the latter was comfortable enough to stand and walk slowly after about 3 hours. It was indeed remarkable to note the organization, mutual affinity and cooperation among the elephants. How often would we see or offer such altruist, unpaid help for a lonely woman in our vicinity? The African bird kiwi is another teacher for those people who get perplexed or anxious whenever they encounter an adversity or trouble in their family life. It also sets an example for man to follow in his sexual relationships. Kiwi is very careful and cautious in having sex. It is very concerned about moral etiquette in its family and therefore disciplines its own behavior first. It maintains graceful relations with its mate and gets involved in the carnal intimacy only in private, taking care that no one sees that shameful act. It always protects its mate and the family. When the female lays eggs, it remains there for her support and fosters the eggs efficiently. It has to take care of the egg for 80 days. By the time the baby kiwi come out and it begins to enjoy the moment of becoming a father, the female lays another egg. But it doesn't perturb the male. It again starts the 80 days project with equal sincerity. At times when several eggs are laid, one after the other at a span of 80 days or so, it has to continue performing this devout duty for years. Look at its endurance, its loyalty and devotion to its responsibilities. How many of us, in the ambience of all-round obscenity, are so careful about protecting the moral norms in our families today? How many would have been so duty-bound towards raising the children, Had the process of childbirth and growth been so time-consuming and testing? The social system designed by the rishis, Indian seers and sages of the Vedic times, was perfect in terms of the virtuous development of the individuals, happy families and society. Here, the Brahmacharya ashram was set for the acquisition of education towards the overall development of the personality, gaining knowledge of the self and of the world around, professional skills for respectable, self-reliant livelihood, and essential training for becoming a responsible adult member of the society. It was only after a successful completion of this phase that one was allowed to marry an appropriate, with respect to the compatibility of their virtuous background and training during the Brahmacharya ashram, match of her liking. Marriage was a sacred institution for the couple to live together in kind cooperation and with industriousness for mutual uplifting and happiness, along with making due contributions for the peace, progress and happiness of the society. The sanctity of the marriage institution and healthy, respectful relationship between men and women in all walks of life must be revived in the modern era too, if we are to retain our pride of being the gifted children of God, being the most intelligent and emotionally evolved species, and the crown of the living beings on this earth. Unrestrained pleasure. Lessons from nature. Apart from the obvious evil effects like explosive population growth and health hazards, the most dangerous though latent harm of sexual profligacy and related unrestrained acts for mere sensual pleasure lies in causing mental sickness and severe psychosomatic disabilities resulting from hormonal imbalances. That unrestrained sexual involvement is detrimental in all respects is clearly cautioned in the quote, Marnam Bindu Patena Jivanam Bindu Dharnam. Nature reminds us of this warning via the live examples in the animal kingdom. Some Western psychologists and other scientists have argued in favor of unrestrained sex as natural for humans. Because, in their view, as no rules abide the sexual activities in other creatures in nature's magic box, man too, being an social animal, be allowed this freedom. It looks like they have not studied the animal population closely. The sex element in these creatures is mainly used for reproduction. Unlike the humans, they lack in multiple expressions colors of calm. The natural tendencies of most of the mighty members of the animal kingdom are quite disciplined and they have sex only when inspired by nature to grow their population. Many of the tinier ones having excess of it ruin their lives much sooner. Nature has its own system of penalizing those crossing the limits. Each of the male seals ends its own life struggling with other males of its community for a mere possession of more females to fulfill its lust. A stout male holds nearly 40 to 50 females in its possession. Its carnal lust still remains excited and he keeps attacking the other male seal whenever he sees a new, young female in the latter's hold. He suffers double wounds of this licentious tendency. Apart from burning its own energy in excessive sex, it keeps getting injured in the struggle with the other males in their combating cravings for female seals. By the time the 3-month season allotted by nature for sex and reproductive activities to this species is over, the male seals are totally devoid of physical strength. They are not in a position to even collect their food. They have to suffer abominable, untimely death as a consequence of their unchecked sexual lust. On the contrary, there are many species in nature that live in groups of several males and female together, but none of the males get sexually attracted towards any female except for one single mate, that too on rare occasions inspired by nature in the appropriate season. Elephant is known to be quite wiser among the wild population. They live in herds. The head of a herd is the only male member who owns the right to have sexual intercourse with all the female members of the herd. He has to face self-triggered struggles and wars and lose much of his might because of this peculiar lusty tendency and autocratic possession. A sexual desire or related expressions shown by any other male member often leads to his serious fight with the herd leader. The latter, if defeated, usually becomes mad and dangerous for the life of others too. Similar insanity is shown by the sexually excited scorpion couples who dance a lot during this process, and the female, in her excitation, often attacks and eats off the male. Some people think having sex with the beloved female companion pleases and attracts her more towards the male. But this is an illusion imposed by their own passions. The reality is just the opposite. Soon the female realizes that her body is being crushed and squeezed to satisfy the carnal lust in the name of love. She begins to hate him and even becomes aggressive against him at times. As warned in the quote, Marnam Bindu Patena, Jivanam Bindu Dharnam, illicit, excessive sex is an apparent call for all-round detriment and untimely death. The concupiscence of male frogfish is a live illustration of this fact. While the female frogfish remains calm, her male, being impatient and lewd like many men, gets overexcited and runs behind her. In its lusty insanity, it buries its teeth in the female's flesh and is unable to take them out after few seconds of the carnal joy of sex. Apart from injuring the mate, it obviously becomes a handicap without the teeth. It is unable to eat anything and has to die of starving within few days. The cry of cats and bitter grinning of the monkeys express the maddening excitation of sexual desire in them. Concupiscence triggers a porcupine jump haphazardly. It even forgets about eating, sleeping, and keeps running and jumping with small wood pieces in her mouth. A snake clasped with its female during sex becomes over-possessive and emotionally charged. It doesn't tolerate any disturbance at that time. If it even experiences someone looking at it from a long distance, it retaliates with a murderous attack on the former, while risking its own life. A male ostrich usually has sexual relation with more than one female. He keeps all, around 7 to 8, of them with equal care and looks after the eggs and baby ostriches born by all of them. It looks as though he is born only for producing and fostering the offspring. Those men whose cravings, thoughts and attempts remain confined to sensual lust and those whose life also revolves around the above activities should also be put in the category of a species like the ostrich bird or the sealfish rather than being counted as humans. Lusty men are no less wild than these animals. Do they deserve to be a part of a civilized human society? The natural season for copulation in deers is full of frivolous, bloody fights amongst the males, as they have to have a head-on collision with their competitors while selecting a female. Their horns break, bodies get wounded and smashed. They are even killed at times in this passion of having a sex at any cost. The female deers neutrally watch this combative struggle, and, in the end, present themselves to the service of the winner without shedding any tears for the dead or the injured defeated ones. The male eagles also have to undergo a peculiar fight with the females who have given mating invitation to them. This drains off most of their strength even if they are able to survive the pleasure of mating later. Similar is the case with many other animals and birds whose mutual fights in the excitation towards gaining the sexual company of the counterpart often turns out to be fatal. Marine zoological research in the 1950s had revealed some significant facts about the anglerfish. The male members with a rare survival rate as compared to that of the females are just 1/10 of the average size, a mere 4 inches as compared to the 40 inches size of the latter. This lascivious creature literally survives on the blood of its female host and is therefore, according to the laws of nature, bound to live an underdeveloped life of a parasite. Don't the profligate persons also invite similar fate by their licentious sex indulgence? The dwarf existence of the male anglerfish also explains the cause of our negligible existence on the map of progressive and developed world. What else one could expect for the male-dominated societies like ours, Indian, surviving on exploitation of females? From where did this inhumane tendency enter our society? The answer to this may also be found from the research on anglerfish, which revealed that the lethargic, comfort-loving nature and cravings of the male angler are behind his sinful, abominable conduct. Howsoever pulling and appealing, the pleasure and amorous thrill of sex might appear at the outset, it holds nothing except the pernicious seeds of decline, loss and destruction. It is like the beautiful wildflower found in Africa which attracts the birds by its soothing fragrance and looks. It slowly starts shrinking its petals as soon as a bird sits on it. It soon captures the bird tightly in its folds. By the time the latter realizes this, its sharp thorns hidden inside would have pinched him. The bird can't even attempt flying out. Soon the thorns seep all his blood and release the victim in almost dead state. Importance of continence. The paradise fish found in China releases bubbles of a gel-like sticky liquid. It gathers them jointly to make a compact town of these bubble houses. It then starts laying its eggs and continues sending them in these protected shelters, one after the other, thus expanding its own population. The bubbles are so well stuck and guarded by it that there is no place for escape for anyone. The web of Maya has also expanded itself by creating enormous forms of bodies for the existence of the Jiva in this world. It makes all arrangement and takes all measures to let the Jiva remain engulfed in this creation. Rare are those who endeavor and even succeed in breaking this sheath of Maya. Alligator snapper, found in America, is known for its wild slyness. Its face resembles that of a tortoise. It moves its tongue outward so artfully as though a piece of flesh is floating freely. The fishers, which get attracted and come to catch this tongue, fall prey to it and reach straight in the snapper's mouth. This is what happens to the Jiva that is attracted by the elusive charm of cravings and joy of the sense organs. It takes birth in this world and is gulped by death again and again. Only a few beatified sages, who recognize the passions of the sense organs as pertaining to the gross body alone and realize the true desire of the soul distinctly, can detach and get liberated from this thraldom. Crocodiles lie still, like a rock or a dead animal. As soon as a fish or any other organism reaches nearby, it grabs and gulps them in no time. Our sense organs are no less crafty. These naturally appear to be nothing more than immovable parts of the body. They would indeed remain only tools for the Jiva, if the latter keeps due caution and care to keep away from their delusive grip. Most of us remain ignorant of their power and pay no attention to what we eat, watch, read, or do in our routine in general. Once we commit the mistake of incontinence, our otherwise dead sense organs get alive and stimulated and grab us in the hold of their ever-increasing thirst. It is then too difficult, almost impossible to come out of the net of their cravings. This is why the saint seers adopt and advise self-restraint and moral disciplines in every moment, every act of life. This is what is the secret of their attaining and protecting their powers, potentials, talents and respectful accomplishment. Grasshopper happens to be the principal food of the European sparrow. But how could the tiny bird catch it? Well, it hides itself in a corner and starts mimicking the voice of a grasshopper and sends eager calls. Poor grasshopper reaches there in response and finds himself caught by the bird. The call of our cravings is equally deceptive. We can't make out that these are only the passions of our sense organs, of the gross body, of the mind enslaved by its pleasure, and not of our soul, our true self. The Jiva in us continues to satisfy their thirst under this illusion and keeps harming its own self. One who understands the game of Maya and remains distant and insulated from its ever-expanding and delusive folds is wise, thoughtful and sagacious, and true devotee of the soul. Only his life could be fulfilling and successful in absolute in reality. Spiritual literature describes the attachment to the pleasures of the five sense organs as a major obstacle in the freedom of the soul. The control of the tongue and the sensual pleasure of the sex organs are found to be of the utmost importance because these senses are considered to be the most sensitive and strong in terms of the unbounded limits of the burning desires associated with them. Unless disciplined by determined will, these senses would ruin the dignity and life of their master, the human being. A small battalion of German soldiers, sent to Poland, had secretly started a terrorist attack, which in no time spread across Europe and embraced the whole world in the worst ever event of the 20th century, the Second World War. The great powers of the world had to surrender before the newly emerged might of the German emperor. The world was stunned to note that France, known to be the second biggest power of the world after Great Britain those days, had accepted defeat and was going to surrender unconditionally in front of the fascist of Germany. France alone was the country other than the United Kingdom which had colonial expansion up to Far East, in South Asia and in several parts of the North and South America. The nation, which was the mother of Napoleon, the country which had transformed the shape of political system across the globe by the historic French Revolution, had become so meek and helpless. It was indeed a stunning event for the whole world. As the records of world history reveal, it didn't take long for the thinkers to discover the causes of this upside-down fate of that nation. Excessive comforts, incontinence and luxurious attitude of the French people those days had drained all its power. The organized power of the masses had gone with their lust for woman and wine. The scientific tools of prevention of pregnancy had become a boon for aggravating their lust. Colossal amount of wines was fueling it further. How could the country that was supplying almost 3/4 of the world's demand of expensive wines remain insulated from this intoxicating craze? It was not so much the might or intrepidity and cruelty of the Germans, rather the self-induced decline and self-invited infirmities of the French, which was responsible for their tragic defeat. History has ample examples evincing the downfall of the empire and civilizations because of unrestricted cravings, cozy attitude and lavish lifestyle. Our country too had suffered similar fate during the dark, declining phase of Reticola, the erotic age, in the medieval times, which had waned our ancient glory, maligned our culture and put us in the tyrannical folds of all-round slavery. The real power of a nation lies in the moral conduct and patriotic integrity of its citizens. The eminent strength of morality could be cultivated and expanded by the mutually supporting behavioral principles of spirituality described as tapa, brahmacharya, continence, integrity, disciplined and constructive use of calm, etc. in the Indian philosophy. The Indian science of spirituality has been teaching since ages that avoidance of unrestricted dissipation and degeneration of calm bestows and preserves distinct vibhutis. Self-restraint provides the only key to reach this treasure. Iron or gold do not gain their value unless heated, melted and purified in red-hot furnace. Similar tapa is essential for refinement of personality too. Nothing significant could be achieved in life without self-restraint and tapa. Living an incontinent life is like milking a cow in a broken pot. No milk could ever be collected this way. Instead, the drops fallen down from the holes would even dirty the clothes of the milkman. Incontinence leads to dissipation of all the stored, inherited potentials and qualities and also makes one suffer the evil consequences of the misuse of the available resources and abilities. Meghnad had gained immense strength by adopting chastity for a long time despite being married. He could not have been defeated by anyone except Lakshmana, who too had observed ascetic brahmacharya during his 14 years of exile in the forests. The latter was able to attain divine weapons because of the radiance of this tapa. Only Shrangi Rishi was able to guide the Putrashti Yagya for King Dasharatha. No other Rishi could generate that unfailing power of specific mantras of this Yagya, which he could because of his lifelong unperturbed continence and tapascharya. It was only after succeeding in self-restraint against the amorous offer of the heavenly beauty Urvashi, that Arjuna could be blessed by the divine bow, Gandiva. The great Maratha king Shivaji is known for his intrepidity and piety of character. Once, a young charming woman from the defeated enemy's camp was brought before him. He not only treated her with respect like a mother, but also arranged for her safe return. It was only because of this moral dignity that he could receive the beatified sword from Bhavani. Consistency in continence and adoption of high moral values is the major criteria of qualifying for the boons of God. Adoption of Brahmacharya had endowed Swami Dayanand with tremendous physical and mental strength. He had once prevented the locked horn fight between two stout raging oxen, by simply holding their horns in one hand each and pushing them apart. Pushing and stopping a fast-running horse cart, including the royal one with many trained horses, from the front was a child's play for him. Edmund Hillary, the pioneer of climbing the Everest, had also attempted the adventure of boating from Ganga Sagar to Deva Prayaga, against the flow of river Ganges. Then an Indian yogi had stopped his speedy boat of 100 horsepower by tying and pulling it with a thin rope. Despite all efforts from the other end, the boat could not move even an inch ahead even though its engine remained switched on. Gandhari had vowed to remain blind after being married to a blind man. She kept her eyes closed by tying a cloth over them. Her determined tapa aroused supernatural power in her eyesight. She opened them just for a moment to bless her son Duryodhana. The radiance of her eyesight had made the open portion of the latter's body stout like iron, foolproof against all attacks. It was indeed the power of their brahmacharya that nurtured divine potentials and talents in Hanuman, Bhishma and Shankaracharya. Ample number of more live examples of this sort evince that glorious exaltation of life. Achievement of something worth its dignity would be possible only if the vile, downward tendencies are restrained completely and the vital energies and the inner powers are protected carefully. A deviation and diversion from this righteous path could vitiate and decline even the highly empowered and talented ones. Abhimanyu's conversation with his wife Uttara, as narrated in the Mahabharata, indicates that, just few days before the war, he broke the discipline of Brahmacharya in the passion of having a child. This was the major cause of his failure in breaking the Chakravyuha of the Kaurava on the fateful day. Had he not committed this flaw, he would have been victorious, as he himself and everyone around had rightly expected. King Nahusha was offered the throne of heavens after accomplishing the grand tapa for this purpose. However, he invited his own denigration by falling prey to the allurement of celestial damsels. He soon ruined the invaluable attainments and fell into miserable ends by becoming a snake. The prestigious King Yayati faced scorn and hatred in history in the later days because of his excessive lust and eagerness to retain the youthfulness for the carnal pleasures. King Pandu's attempts of sex, against the warning of the doctors due to his physical sickness, became the cause of his untimely death. The super-strong King Ravana, who was known to have won over the laws of time, met an abject end because of his incontinence at the root of all his sins. Several other demons and giants have also faced humiliating, sinful, devastation of their mighty lives because on the same grounds. Bhasmasura's fascination for Parvati, when the latter appeared as the glamorous dancer Mohini, became the cause of his blunder of inflaming himself into ashes. Sund and Upasund killed each other in their battle for a pretty damsel. Lack of mental control, unrestrained cravings, and negligence of Brahmacharya were the major causes of the fall and extinction of the demons, the devil giants, despite their hard ascetic endeavors of tapa in the early days and enormous potentials and prosperity gained thereby. Had they been self-restrained and chaste and followed the moral path of magnanimity, they might have been superior to the Devta. Defiance of divine disciplines, evasion of the norms of morality, lusty passions and incontinence consumption of resources, are the insidious tendencies and sinful acts that convert the boons into curses. The above examples of history apply to the modern times too. The countries like USA, Japan, Germany, France, Sweden, etc., rushing zealously in combative race for materialistic prosperity, have slowly realized the negative effects of their consumerized, luxury-driven culture in the general decay and degradation of the physical and mental strength of their people. They have also taken several measures to improve the social ambience and mode of living to some extent. These were the countries where free sex, eroticism and unrestrained individualism was prevalent as the mass motto until a decade ago. The theory of Sigmund Freud had only laid the foundation, but the followers of Neo-Freudism had advocated incontinence in the name of freedom and propagated it extensively as the basis of rise in human life. We all have witnessed the detrimental consequences. Depraving lust, which had crushed only France into its teeth, had, by the end of the 20th century, entrapped the entire world into its folds. Nude colonies, homosexual congregations, gay culture, the spread of the deadly AIDS and intractable psychosomatic disorders, broken families, shattered societies and growing trends of crimes in the childhood, etc. are evidential landmarks of the cultural perversion and ethical death of the human race. It is indeed a matter of great concern, shame and pity that this cultural pollution and denigration of values has also spread rapidly as a wave of modernity and progress in a country like India, the originator of the philosophy of tapa sadhana, the dedicated follower of moral disciplines and continence. Those who can think of tomorrow, those who care for the future generations, should come forward and demonstrate the ideal examples of the truly forward-looking people in their own lives. The best gift the parents today could bestow upon their children is to engage themselves consistently in the great endeavor of self-refinement and cultivation of virtuous tendencies. Restraint from erotic thinking and carnal lust and prevention of drainage and misuse of the potentials is naturally the first requirement in this regard. Swadhyaya satsang, pilgrimage and different kinds of sadhanas are devised to facilitate enlightened development of personality and inculcation of divine values in human life. These must have an integral place in our lives too. A pregnant mother is advised and helped to maintain a calm and happy mood, as this is essential for vigorous growth of the fetus, child. The children born and grown in a positive and pure ambience alone could be hoped to be the kinds every parent, every society, every nation would be proud of. Control and elimination of depraving culture and eroticism is the first and the crucial step to be followed by each one of us, at individual, familial and social levels.